So this is Mark. He is my current lecturer at the University of Central Lancashire for my masters. He's a physio by profession, but he's worked at Liverpool, Burnley, Bolton. So yeah, he's come on to tell us about his journey as a physio, because obviously he's more elite than I am for sure. So Mark, when you're ready.
Okay. Right. Well, thanks for that introduction, Kim, and welcome to everybody that's listening or watching or both as we spend the next sort of 45 minutes learning a little bit about my sort of pathway into football, really. So I'll try and give you all a little brief resume of where I started from. I was a very poor footballer. Who loved the game, and God always loves triers. And I think I tried my best, but I wasn't really, a top class footballer. But when I was growing up, football and rugby were the two things that you played through the winter, and then you played cricket through the summer. There was very little else going on. So my father was a big football fan and a big cricket fan. And so football played a big part in my early sort of primary school into secondary school. And actually, I played for a number of teams at a local level. And I was involved with watching football, a big Bolton Wanderers fan, which I still am. And I've had the privilege of working at that club on two different occasions. And so football was embedded really into me as a young boy. Sadly, though, about 16, 17, I hurt my knee playing football, and it was quite a bad injury that required surgery. And so I'd done my O levels or GCSEs, and I was doing some A levels really, not very well, not very good at school, and not very motivated, shall I say. And this sort of put a dampener on things really, because I couldn't play any sport. I was put into a plaster cast with this knee injury and surgery for a few weeks, and it took me a long time to get back to be able to sort of do any sport. But I was treated at the local hospital by these guys that were physios based in a hospital gym and a pool. And I was really motivated by what they did. So I'd never heard of physios. I'd never thought of being a physio. And I sort of was impressed with the way that they handled me and the things that they did. So as usual, sadly, when you start looking at applying for these things, there was quite a lot of competition, and they certainly needed more qualifications than I was going to get in my A levels. And so I thought, well, I'll apply anyway. A bit of a half-hearted application to a college, and probably got the just treatment it deserved. Sorry, you've been unsuccessful. Please try next year. And so I was sent into a job that I didn't really want to do, but I managed to get this job in a bank. And forgive me if anybody's worked in a bank or is thinking of going in a bank, but it was the best and worst thing that ever happened to me, because it convinced me that I couldn't do this for much longer than the 12 months that probably I needed to do it, to wake up and realize what people had told me in the past about working hard and being sticking to task on things and not drifting and daydreaming and just things that normal growing up boys and girls do. But it was a bit of a culture shock, and I thought, right, I'm going to have to really make a move to try and get myself in a position to get into college to do this physio degree, which involved going to college in the evening to do another couple of GCSEs, to do some more work experience at the hospital, and to really make your application stand out, which I did. And then the rest of it was just interviews as you would normally expect. There was a bit of a practical interview, which was no problem. Maybe the face-to-face contact of the one-on-one and group work I wasn't too enamored with in the interview stage, but I made myself known. And I was invited to a second interview, and the rest is history. I got a place there, and I never looked back. And it was the best thing that I ever did. So if you're not of that mentality that you really do work and you really are driven and motivated, it won't be any surprise to you. But if you're of the makeup that I was, it was sort of the first thing I'd really ever achieved, I think, through failure and
Yeah.
through that inspiration to do more. Um, Sadly, in those days, you trained as a physio in the National Health Service to just really work in the NHS. So I'd never really thought about being a football physio until I decided that I thought, I'd like to do something around football. So where I lived and trained was in Wakefield, West Yorkshire. Great place. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and lots of friends still in that area. And so I decided that I couldn't really see much in sports injuries related to the NHS work. So I volunteered my services to a team called Ossett Town. Some in the room might know Ossett Town. You might have even played Ossett Town. Who knows? But I didn't drive, so it was um, getting a bus up to Ossett from Wakefield to look twice a week at training, a few injuries, and paying my own way on the bus. No payment for going with the team on a Saturday. And so that was my first taste, really. Something I'm proud of, because a few minutes you'll know that I didn't just walk into Liverpool Football Club. Some people do. I think a good colleague of mine, Gary Lewin, for example, probably some of you will have heard of him, worked at Arsenal Football Club and the England physio. Well, he went straight from his training at Guy's Hospital in London straight into Arsenal Football Club, and he stayed there through his career.
Yeah,
So
he's
I didn't.
now got a personal clinic down in London
That's right.
with his brother.
Yeah, that's right. And everybody comes to different levels or the same level through different journeys. And I think I was somebody that's a bit of a wanderer by football club supporting them and a wanderer by name, that I just drifted from club to club and stepped up the ladders. So from Ossett Town, I was working in the Midlands on qualifying, and I worked near Port Vale football ground. And the lady that was our boss was a big Port Vale fan. And the Port Vale were in the fourth division then, which is Division 2, as you guys would know that. And they'd no physio, really. I mean, it's bizarre to think they hadn't got a physio.
It is now.
It's crazy. There's rumour has it that when I started there, they still hadn't have a physio. It was just me sort of muddling my way through, really.
They say that at Needham.
Yeah, well, we all learn, and I think that's another lesson to learn, is that you learn by making mistakes, and it's great that you do make mistakes, because we do learn better
Yeah.
from those bad experiences, because you don't want them to happen again. But sadly, some people keep making the same mistakes again and again, and that's not clever. That's just silly. And I try to, when I work through my practice of doing what I did over the years, was always try not to make the same mistake twice. It's very difficult, but that's the way I did it. So from Port Vale, I did a little bit of part-time work, and that gets your name known. It gets you something to put on a CV. And I ended up doing 3 or 4 lunchtimes, 2 or 3 evenings, home matches and away games for £30. £30 a week. It took, looking back, it was costing me more money to do it, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I also did a bit of part-time work with Leek Town Football Club at the same time, and met a couple of really good guys, Mick Pedgick, who played for Stoke City, Everton in England, and he's still a good pal of mine now, and John Rudge, who became, a big manager at Port Vale for many years, and then worked at Stoke City for another period of time. 2 really good guys that helped me a lot. And those 2 brief experiences were then something to put on a CV.
Yeah.
And I then went to Brighton Football Club, was my first football team. And I can remember going for the interview and getting changed up a little dirt track on the way to Brighton, just out of Worthing, by a golf club to put my suit on because I'd driven a long way. And if only they could see you jumping a hedge to get changed into a suit. But my wife was with me, and she sort of had a little look around Brighton. She was looked after in the players' lounge while I was being interviewed by the manager and two directors. And then one of the directors disappeared, came back in, and they let me know immediately, really, that I got the job. And I felt really pleased. I must have impressed them. We really liked it down there. In fact, I was talking to two players that used to play there, three, just last week. Alan Kirbishley, Dean Wilkins, and Gary Nelson. Lovely fellas, all three of them. And they were a great team to work for at the time. The players were more my age, which helped to make lots of friends with the players and the families. And we were there for nearly 3 years before we moved back to the sunny, warmer climate of the northwest of England. And I then went to Preston North End, a brief spell there, and then went to work for Burnley Football Club. And I thoroughly enjoyed my time. Some people say, ask me what was the job that I enjoyed the most, and it's a difficult one because you'd expect Liverpool Football Club to be the best job that I enjoyed the most, and it clearly was, and it is a great period of my life. And but I felt Burnley were a really proper club, and I know you've had Joey Barton on here, who's an effervescent guy that's got so much experience and a personality to probably fill you with lots of stories and experiences that he's had. And I know he played there, and I know he probably enjoyed playing for Burnley Football Club. It's a proper family club. I always thought that Ipswich Town was another proper family club, and Norwich City, two very well-run clubs, and they're always enjoyed going to them. We didn't do very well at any club there, by the way. We used to always get beaten by Ipswich and Norwich. But I think that's just where you deliberately put yourselves geographically. It takes so long to get there. So we were all tired by the time we got there, and we get beaten. We'd come home and say they were very friendly people down in Norfolk and Suffolk. But so Burnley, I enjoyed quite a lot, and it was there that I had been lucky enough to be asked to lecture for the Football Association on a few courses through the summers from Preston and in my time at Burnley via my ex-college principal, who's a guy called Alan Hodson, that sort of was a big implication of my career, really. He sort of helped me quite a lot of things and inspired me to do well, and really good guy. And so he asked me to do some lecturing work, which I did, and thoroughly enjoyed the 2 weeks at Lillishall, which was the national school, the St George's Park equivalent of now. And at the same time as the treatments of injuries courses were being run, which I lectured on, the coaching courses were on. So you'd meet lots of coaches, lots of players coming to the end of the career, wanting to go into coaching. And it was a really good, happy time again, where it was a bit legendary, really, Lillishall. It was great. It was a funny place to go, but while you were there, you for 2 weeks, it was a very much a networking and a social side of things, but hard work. And the message for that is that really, it's not all about your qualifications. It's not all about what grades you get in life. Nobody's ever asked me, thankfully, what grade I got in anything, because they probably would be very disappointed, really. But I tried, and I felt that my personality and my honesty would get me through in life, and I hope it has, because those are things that are free. They're not. You don't have to work for them. You don't have to train for them. You don't have to do things like that. So if you're good guys and you're trustworthy, and people, respect you in a way by those principles, I think you'll get far, whatever you choose to do, or further maybe than probably some of the more clever people.
So also in terms of for student reference, perhaps even doing work experience to try and boost their CV is a way forwards.
Well, I think somebody once said it's not what you know, it's who you know, and I think that the door opens for you if you do that, and it shows that you're working that bit extra. So, like for me, going to Lillyshaw for 2 weeks in the summer, I only had 4 weeks off. So it will be a family holiday for 2 weeks. And then, well, no, do the Lillyshaw bit, the lecturing first over the summer, 2 weeks off on a holiday, and then back in again for 11 months of the year. And then you're working Christmas Day, you're working Boxing Day, you're working New Year's Day. And I never viewed it as a chore until the end of my career, where I did. And I knew the time was then to leave day-to-day football, because I felt, looking at other people that I'd worked with, and I'm sure that Kevin and other colleagues have seen that with players that they've played with, when they know the time's right to stop playing, or you look at coaches and you think they're burnt out, they've done what they wanted to do, and they're becoming very cynical, very negative, very short-tempered. And I think those are not good for anybody in any walk of life, really. Certainly in sport, and certainly in football, you know, it's not good to feel like that. And so for me, I felt that I never felt that the time spent was wasted. I always felt that the more you put into something, the more you get out of it, and that door opens by the fact you can be seen to have volunteered to do work. You've put yourself into some positions where you're not getting paid for it. And a lot of people, myself included, who's employed a lot of people in football, those are the things I'd look for. Not what grade did you get in your exams, what level of degree or A level. As long as you've got the bare minimum to do that, it's the people skills, the personal skills that really separate, for me, average physio, sports scientists, conditioners, whatever we call ourselves, to the really good ones. And the really good ones are the ones that, you know, work well with people.
Yeah. So going off that, obviously you've spoken to me in our degree about multidisciplinary teams. Can you explain to the students what we mean by that? Because obviously the number of people at work.
I can do now, but just arriving at Liverpool Football Club, for example, so from Burnley, it was it was Alan Hodgson at the FA that probably got me that first interview, because Liverpool rang him for a recommendation, and I was lucky enough to be given a second interview and get the job. And I thought I was joining a big club. I mean, when I was growing up, Liverpool were the top team, along with maybe Leeds and, you know, the usual reprobates of Man United and one or two London-based clubs. But it was sort of a culture shock when I arrived there. Who else have we got, in your words, in this multidisciplinary team? What do you mean, multidisciplinary team? What colleagues are you on about? There isn't anymore. So this team that had won all these European trophies, I saw who's here. Well, there's the coaches, the goalkeeping coach, and the chief scouts, and there's you. No fitness coach, no masseurs, nothing. No match analysis, performance analysis. It was all done by people going to games and watching games and reporting back. So I thought, crikey, this is pretty bad. This is worse than Burnley and Preston. At least there was other people to help and do things. And so, in a way, I had to develop my own multidisciplinary team, which started off really of being maybe another physio to help me do the reserves, maybe a masseur to help do the soft tissue treatment, recovery work, etc. Maybe looking at a fitness coach, maybe looking at a sports scientist, maybe looking at a nutritionist, maybe looking at a psychologist, maybe looking at a biomechanist, a podiatrist, a chiropodist. The list goes on. But it didn't start like that. It started just with me. And so it was a building experience. And I very quickly thought, I don't know enough here. I've been given this job with one of the top 5 clubs in the country and probably one of the top 10 in the world. And my background has been Orsett Town, Leek Town, and Brighton, Burnley, and Preston to be going into this club. So I thought, right, the first thing I need to do is to do more training. And that's academic stuff, unfortunately. Get your way around it if you can. No, really, you're going to have to do some more learning and teaching myself. And so I approached, and I did that, not for physio stuff, because in my view, I knew enough about physio in football to be able to rehabilitate people. What I wasn't too well trained in was the sports science of things, the fitness of players, injury prevention, strength and conditioning, nutrition, psychology. These were the things that I enjoyed, and I thought I'm going to have to get more knowledge about this. So I approached John Moores University in Liverpool, and at the time, the only day we hadn't got any games was a Thursday night. So I rang them. Or did I send a letter? In the days that when people wrote a letter, I could have well written a letter. Probably the last time I wrote one. And I wrote it to the programme leader and said I was a head physio at Liverpool Football Club looking to improve myself. And I wanted to do a part-time master's degree in sports science. And they said, right, be in touch with us, ring us on this number. And I rang them and I said, I've only got Thursday afternoon and Thursday evening. That's it. So whatever you've got on in a program, can I do those modules? They said yes. And so I embarked on that on a 3-year program of part-time work. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me, really, to be fair, because it really pushed me on to another level of knowledge and I wanted to understand more things. And I really thrived on that. But again, the commitment was you were with the first team, home and away with European games. We were coming back at all hours of the morning, straight into work, and then jumping on a coach again. You're in Sunday mornings, you had matches on Sunday afternoons as well, maybe, whatever the situation was. And I was married with 2 or 3 kids. So it was obviously, I was going to say 2 or 3 wives then. I wasn't. I was married with 1 wife and 3 kids. And it was really difficult to box that time off, but I did my best. And then looking back now, I've been in situations where as a lecturer, I've given somebody, if the pass mark was 40%, I've given somebody 40%. Loads of people 40% probably, in a way.
Don't say things like that. That'll worry me about my results.
Don't you worry. Don't you worry. Don't you worry about that. But you've given it because you think they deserved it. And I did one module at this John Moores University, and it was called Research Methods. And it was the most boring subject I've ever seen in my life. And for somebody that took 3 attempts to get maths GCSE, it was a flipping car crash. And anyway, I thought, I have no idea what I'm doing with this. And I stumbled my way through it and got the mark of 40%, which is just a pass, the bare pass.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So what pressures have you faced in the game then as a physio?
Lots of pressures. And I think that your pressures are, you read a lot about pressures where it's testing your professional integrity, that you're having to sort of lie whether somebody's fit or not fit, whether you think they should play in this game or not, and you're trying to help everybody and do the right thing and please everybody, but you can't. And that was something that I knew very early on in my career, before I even stepped foot anywhere near the likes of Liverpool and Sunderland, Bolton in the Premier League, was that you had to be true to yourself, first of all. So if you're looking at if people to respect you and people to have the trust with you, then you can't be friend for everybody. You can't not hide the bad news. Somebody once offered me, he's the Premier League medical advisor now, Mark Gillette, and he offered me a job, one of his last clubs that he did, and he said, I want you to come in and be the bad news monitor. And I thought, what do you mean by that? And he said, somebody that takes the pressure off him giving the bad news to the coaches or the players. And I thought that's quite apt, really, because I think he probably had come to his decision that working in club football now, having been at Chelsea and West Brom and Nottingham Forest, was probably the time to maybe move out of club football, really, where he didn't want to be put in these positions of being the bad news monitor or, you know, trying to cajole things. But the pressure is always about minimizing injury. And so you have to be honest with the coach, honest with the players, and honest with yourself. And if it is an injury that is going to take 6 weeks or 8 weeks, you have to tell them that. If it's going to take 6 to 8 months, you have to tell them that. If it's a career-threatening injury, don't hide it. You have to tell the player very early on there is a risk that, or a chance that you might not play again with this injury. Then everybody knows from day one. And clearly that's really difficult because, you know, it could be young players that are just stepping out on the career, or it could be players with families and livelihoods to look after, and the threat of injury, you know, coming to the end of the career is not good. So I've always tried to be straight down the middle, but never really just looking after players, because ultimately, as anyone that's played the game or that's been around professional football, you have to be firm with players and you have to be fair, and they have to understand that what you're telling them is really in the best interests. And that comes with trust and respect. So usually you might have had a few little spats with them, and I don't like that, falling out with anybody. But ultimately, you need to have that in your makeup, that you are prepared to stand up and be counted when you're giving some bad news out. So really, pressures at Liverpool were public eye. TV games repeated time and again of injuries or incidents or players out of action with an injury. When they will be back? Why are they not back? Did they break down injured again? And so I didn't like that. No one likes that, but it's part of the territory. But I'm a pretty resilient guy that would make my own decisions. And I left Liverpool really by sort of a lack of trust, probably from my point of view. I didn't trust the coach. I didn't trust him to say the right things to the player at the right time. But also knew that because I asked him, if you don't trust me, get rid of me and we'll call it a day, because I'm not being a puppet by just being a mouthpiece for the manager, because that only works once till it goes wrong. And then within a dressing room environment, clearly people understand that it's not Mark Leather talking. This is the manager talking, telling him to say this, telling him to say that. It doesn't work like that. So I wasn't really prepared to sort of lose those things that I said earlier. Your honesty, your integrity, and your character is being honest to people, whether it's good news or bad news. That doesn't stop me, as you wanted me to mention this, Kim, saying that you might have a list as long as your arm, as has happened to me at Sunderland, of injured players. And it was embarrassing. And it was quicker just to say, these are the ones that's fit. You know, let's say 8 or 9 players. And then a list of 15 to 16, 18 players injured. And Peter Reid was my manager, which some of you will have heard of him. He could be nasty, Reedy. He could give you a dressing down. Only a little man, but he got a big personality. So I thought I'll try something different. I slid it under his door. the little paper that says who's injured, who's not training today, and why, blah blah blah. And that only did it once, because he come chasing me down the track. Get yourself in here. What's going on? And he fully knew why, because we were struggling as a team, and some players were choosing whether to maybe play or not play. It was a very difficult time, but we all are under pressure, and equally now with coaches. I mean, crikey, 6 games you lose, and then on the bounce or 4, and the coach is sacked. It's ridiculous. So I understand why they're under pressure. They're under more pressure than we are.
So at what point do you then pass on to the next? Obviously, having a multidisciplinary team, you've got that option to pass on once you've finished with them as a physio. Is there a point where you can pass them on, or is your involvement continuous?
Their involvement and my involvement is continuous all the way through. So if you are ahead of anything, ahead of a department, ahead of a business, you can't do everything. And if you try to do that, you will not do very well. You've got to delegate people, and you've got to have a strategy of how you think you need to work, and also which people have got a better skill set to do the jobs that you want to do. My view of doing a master's degree wasn't to become a sports scientist. It was to be able to sit across the table to the nutritionist or the psychologist or a fitness coach or a strength and conditioner, to be able to have an educated discussion with them. And so that improved my ability to question them, to challenge them, and then for me to then ultimately have the final call as to whether we felt we were going to tell the coaching staff and the player that he was now ready to train again and ready to play. And so that also means organisation. Somebody once said to me, a well-known coach that has just lost his job at Celtic Football Club. I wonder who that is. Anyway, I loved him, great guy, but a fiery temper. But I loved the guy's personality. If I was a player, you'd want to play for him. But he once said, anyone can be organised. And I thought, you're wrong. Because I'm not convinced, one, you're organised. And B, it's not something that you can maybe coach people to do that. But with a multidisciplinary team, and as a coach now, as a head coach, you need to be organised, because you're looking after so many people. And this organisation is obvious to everybody. And so I wouldn't want that on my CV, that he was a good guy, but he was disorganised. He was all over the show. So I think you knowing your roles and responsibilities, and then following the player through, not being with him all the time, because that's not healthy for a player to be under the care of one person in the medical department who's constantly too close to them to make your impartial decision, to maybe give the bad news. So I didn't do that. I used to disappear for a while or do bits of other things while somebody else was carrying out the treatment and everything else. And then I would always have the guts to stand up and be counted and make a decision, make a call, knowing that we'll get some right and we'll get some wrong. What we didn't like was making silly decisions and knowing in your heart of hearts it was going to go the wrong way. And I think that's really a lesson, to take a step back and then say, are we really sure that this guy can train or play today safely, in all confidence that he's not going to get injured again? And that's the multidisciplinary team minimise that. It's interesting when people talk about machines and artificial learning and technology and analysts and technology, from scouting and recruitment and talent identification, all these things. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter what the technology is. Somebody's inputted data into that system that's a human being, and somebody at the end will make the decision, which will be human beings. So it's not just human beings that make decisions, and it's not just technology that makes decisions. It's that context of them both coming in together to hopefully make more right decisions and good decisions than wrong ones, but there'll still be wrong ones made.
Last year we had one of our students that is our first student to go on to graduate from here and then go on to do a physiotherapy degree. So she's coming to the end of her first year, which we're delighted about, and that being a pathway. You highlighted areas that people need to work on. If there is some advice, further advice that you'd give one of our students or some of our students, I know some of the students on the call today are looking to go into that industry. What would you give them, and what would you say to them?
Well, the job opportunities now in football on the areas of medical and sports science are by far greater than they've ever been before. Maybe up to the last 12 months with obvious things like COVID-19, etc. But there's so much going on in academies in football with full-time positions. There's a variety of these professions, from performance analysis, from coaching, from strength and conditioning, from physiotherapy, from sports therapy, from sports rehabilitation. There's loads of jobs for the right people. And I think that the best way really is the internet's great, and it's also not so great, but I think it's a great way of searching for things and keywords of jobs that you're interested in. So for example, if it's performance analysis, if it's scouting or recruitment, or it's coaching, or it's as we've said, physio, sports science, psychology, just have a look around those with the word sport in there, or football in there, if football is what you're really interested in doing. And then you get a good feel of what people in those professions are doing. And you also see lots of podcasts and webinars where people have put things like we're talking about today, their own experiences. Maybe not somebody as old and as ancient as I am, but more recent people that's gone through the system of college, into university and into football. And they'll give you an idea of what their pathway looks like that's a bit more relevant academically to what I've done. But the thing is that you need to be driven, and you need to be focused, and you need to not be worried about getting some knockbacks. I should have said, back in the day, I did send 92 letters, not emails, proper letters, to all football league clubs with a CV when I was part-time, if you like, at Port Vale, working in the National Health Service full-time. And I got 14 replies back, and all 14 said, no thanks, we're not interested. So out of 92, 14 bothered to reply, and all 14 that bothered to reply was saying they didn't want me. And I didn't sort of look at that as being, that's the end of it, go and do something else, because I knew what something else meant to me, and that was the bank. I didn't want to go back anywhere near that. So you try to do what you can to strengthen your CV, and that comes with constantly trying to get any experience that you can from people that you know that are attached to clubs, and just to get their angle of what they say. Listen to the right people, but ultimately it's about you as a person. People don't employ qualifications, they employ people. And so the lots of the softer skills, as I would call them, they're things that you can really work at. Communication, making eye contact with people, you know, being organized, being sort of enthusiastic, sticking to task, doing little tasks that constantly keep you up to speed. And I think that those sorts of skills are really what most of the jobs, that when you work with people, that's why you're working with people. If you want to be a computer geek, that's great. And I don't knock that, because that's what they want to do, but you're not really working so much with people. When you're working with people, you definitely need all the softer skills that I've said, as well as the technical skills to work the equipment or come up with the programs or the treatments or the conditioning stuff that you would normally do, to use GPS monitors and heart rate monitors. You still need that, but you still have to explain and educate people why they're using them. So your softer skills are really, really important. And I think if you do get a knockback, then you need to be prepared to put yourself back above the parapet again, to be faced possibly with another rejection. But eventually, if you really want, that's my view, if you really want something, then, and you're prepared to make sacrifices, then you will get where you want to be. I'm not saying that you'll get to a Liverpool Football Club level, but you'll get to work in professional football. And it might be that people are quite happy working in an academy setting of football. They don't want to work with the first team for whatever reason. That's fine. You find your own position and your own comfort of what you want to do. But I think that's a really big thing, is that I have 3 lads, and they've had rejection, and they've got jobs, and then they've not got jobs. They're lost. They don't know where they want to be or what they want to do, but they keep trying. And luckily, the dad, myself, has got that experience where I've had loads of knockbacks, and I've not stepped, into the biggest club at the first time of asking. That pathway took me 7 or 8, 9 years to get to Liverpool Football Club. But I've made sacrifices, as I've said, moving around the country, moving your family and doing that, which I knew that was what I needed to do. Very few people stay at one club the whole of their career.
Thank you, Mark. One of the things that is important from that for our students to know is, you call it soft skills or transferable skills. A lot of employers contact me and speak to our students about those skills that they learn in a sports course, and what sports individuals typically have, like, as you say, good communication and being able to talk to people, eye contact, etc. So a lot of employers approach me. So that's an important message for our students to really work on them.
I certainly, when I first started playing football, I've been lucky enough to work with some really good physios. No, and it's really important listening to you say it. Not just physios as in knowing their stuff, personalities. Physios were always the hub of the football club for me. Certainly from when I first started, and it was a place where people went to chat, to socialise, to have a bit of a laugh. Obviously, it's gone the other scale a lot more now, with the money involved and more professional, and a lot of football clubs now don't let anyone in the physio room unless they're injured, which where do you sit on that? I'm a big believer that when you are injured, it's tough mentally. I was fortunate enough not to have a real bad injury until late on in my career, by which time only injured players were allowed in the physio room, and I had a microfracture, dislocated shoulder. I struggled with it. I must admit, I wanted to see other lads. And I just wondered where you sit on the scale. Do you see a benefit of other lads coming in to have a little bit of a laugh and a conversation?
Yeah, it was always encouraged to players to be in there. We'll come on to that in a second or two. But there was a guy there, one of the physios. He was a really nice lad. His wife was a solicitor. And I said, Foxy, you're in the wrong job. You should be a solicitor, because that's the way you are. Your personality is a lovely guy, but in football, I'm not sure that you got that sort of control or that respect. He was a lovely guy. And then one of the players said to him, he said, the trouble with you, Foxy, is, he said, you're a community police officer. You have no powers of arrest. He said, whereas Mark, he's the Illuminati. And I thought that was quite a compliment in a way for probably both of us. He was, it's horses for courses. But your treatment room, I always think when managers say they don't want them in there, it's too easy, that's because you think that whoever's running that room, that department, is too soft. And that'll be built on how long people are out of action. How hard are they working when they're not in that room? Which to me, in my career, was never questioned. It was never questioned. because they will work and they will be in afternoons, they will be in an evening if we wanted them to be in an evening for some reason, which was very rarely, but you might do. But it was just a given that you treated in the morning, you treated in the afternoon, your days are longer, but you'd get your rewards for being hard work. But when you're injured, it's very easy to be totally isolated. Coaches might say something for a couple of weeks, sorry about your leg break and you'll be okay, and then it drifts away. But the months out of action, and I think that it's really important that the injured players, particularly long-term injured players, are embedded within the squad, and if possible, they travel with the team if they want to. Some don't want to do that because it upsets them more. I understand that, but you should give them an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, that option.
Absolutely. But the treatment room, somebody once said to me, oh, you just treat people, and no, you don't. As a physio, you are there to be a psychologist, a counsellor, whatever it is. And I think that room is like, yeah, it's a fun and games for half an hour, 40 minutes. And then when everybody goes their own ways, into the gym, into the pool, onto the pitches, that's the work started.
On behalf of everyone at Needham Market Academy, thank you. Thank you for today. So that was really good.
No, it's a pleasure. Thanks very much. And
thanks, Mark. I really appreciate it.
And happy to chat anytime you want. And you're doing some great work from what I understand from Kim that she tells me. You've got a lovely setup and great, work ethos and a philosophy that, the graduates or the guys with you, the students are in a really privileged position, which I'm sure they know they are. You're doing a great job. So well done.